The Okanagan, or the Syilx people, have been in the Okanagan long before the arrivals of the settlers. The Syilx people occupy an area which extends approximately 69,000 square kilometers. The northern area of their territory extends just past Revelstoke, BC. Southern boundary extends into the vicinity of Wilburn, Washington. What is the ONA? The ONA, or the Okanagan Nation Alliance, was formed in 1981, which represents the 8 members of the community. The ONA is committed to the protection, preservation, and enhancement of the peoples, lands, and resource of the member bands in the Okanagan Nation. The ONA promotes enhancement and preservation of the Okanagan Native history, culture, and language. The ONA also has a goal for the conservation, protection, restoration, and enhancement of indigenous fisheries and aquatic resource within the Okanagan Nation. For thousands of years, the salmon run were in the millions. The Syilx people maintained sustainable fisheries that provide a thriving salmon economy. People came to the Okanagan from many places and nations to acquire access to this most nourishing food. The salmon were vitally connected to the people. We're standing here beside Mission Creek. Mission Creek rises from Mission Lake in the Greystoke mountain range. Mission Creek is significant for creek spawning kokanee salmon. Diking and channeling within the city limits in the 1950s plays a large part in the decline of fish spawning.
So what happened?
How did the waters of the Okanagan go from nurturing massive runs of life-giving salmon to virtual emptiness?
What caused this devastating blow to our desert ecosystem?
To answer this, we need to go back downriver to the early 20th century. Back in 1915, the first dam was installed in the Okanagan River. In the 1930s, the Columbia River was subject to multiple dams, until there were 11 dams on the U.S. side of Okanagan territory. These dams were not built with consideration of the salmon fisheries, and they were built in such a way that consequently they effectively blocked salmon runs from their journey upstream from the Pacific Ocean up the Columbia into the inland freshwater lakes of interior BC. Any salmon that did make it encountered another challenge, the channelization of the rivers and creeks in the watersheds that they depend on. By the mid-1950s, the Okanagan River had lost 50% of its length and 90% of its wetland and riparian ecosystems.
Why does channelization matter? Salmon need the habitat created by natural meandering of the creeks and rivers. The oxbows, gravel bars, and sandy shallows created by the deposition cycle of sediment offers protection for spawning salmon, a safe place to lay eggs, and shelter for their babies once they hatch into fry. Add to this the removal of riparian plants and trees, you got a recipe for the worst case scenario for this vital species. Open fast flowing waterways with multiple blockades and no shade or shallows, leaving salmon exposed to predators, to the elements, and warmer water of compromised qualities. By 1995, less than 5,000 sockeye returned to Syilx Lake. The Okanagan coho are thought to be extinct.
So, how is the Syilx Nation working towards restoring the salmon populations? Well, in many ways, actually. For one, they have been developing healthy relationships with both Canadian and American First Nations groups, government organizations such as the DFO and the Ministry of Environment, as well as non-government organizations and the general public, including local and commercial fishermen. Without all these people, this project would be too big to do alone.
A huge part of restoring the salmon populations for the ONA has been restoring their habitat. they have added another 8 kilometers of river and access to another lake by modifying the McIntyre Dam so that salmon can get past it. They have also done the same process on other dams along the Columbia River. Native plants and meandering rivers are key to healthy salmon populations, and so the ONA has done a great deal of work in reversing the channelization of waterways that are essential salmon habitat and restoring the natural course of the rivers. Another big step in the process has been the reintroduction of sockeye fry back into Skaha Lake. Young salmon like to hang out in lakes while they grow to be big enough to migrate out to sea, and mature salmon use lakes to wait out the summer heat before spawning. So in 2003, the ONA started releasing young salmon back into the lakes. They have also been working towards keeping the waters flowing. By that, I mean taking measures to make sure that the water in local waterways stays at a level that is healthy for the fish. They do this by developing water management strategies, such as controlling the diversion of water to agricultural lands for irrigation.
The Okanagan Nation Alliance proudly opened up a new hatchery located on the Penticton Indian Band Reserve, which has been really vital to the restoration process of the salmon. It has the capacity to rear up to 8 million eggs and is 25,000 square feet. The ONA says that this hatchery is a testament to the perseverance of the Syilx people in restoring the salmon, one of their 4 food chiefs, and is a great step forward. The Okanagan Nation also started a fishery after seeing their salmon populations rise with their efforts. They call it Okanagan Select and sell freshly canned salmon, which promotes a healthy food diet and a local food diet. The profits from Okanagan Select are reinvested in the restoration and conservation efforts put forth to keep these salmon populations coming back. Finally, the Syilx Nation believes that with their prayers, thanks, and traditional gatherings, the salmon came back. The annual salmon feast is still held today on traditional fishing grounds, with the nation offering gratitude for the abundant salmon returns and prayers for the future. The Okanagan Nation Alliance, in a very short time, has become the largest indigenous inland fishery in North America. With that, their success has been very substantial. The resilience of the Syilx people and the Okanagan salmon continue to shine through many success stories.
So we're here at the Okanagan Nation Alliance to interview Tessa Turbasket.
Hi, Tessa.
Hi.
Hey. So can you tell us about yourself and how you became involved with the Okanagan Nation Alliance? What's your role with the ONA?
Yeah, so my name's Tessa Turbasket. I'm from the Lower Similkameen Indian Band, which is part of the 7 communities of the Okanagan Nation. And so the Okanagan Nation Alliance is the tribal council that represents these 7 communities. And how I came apart, I was a summer student about three summers ago. I started within fisheries. So I was out on the water and the land, helping with the harvest, and I just fell in love with the job and became full-time.
How did the collapse of the traditional salmon fisheries affect the Syilx people as a society?
So the collapse was absolutely detrimental to our people, to our way of life. The Okanagan people were known as the salmon people. The salmon is one of our 4 food chiefs, which kind of means that it's the creature of the water, and it gave its life for the people to be, so that we could live, I guess. And so the 4 food chiefs is kind of like our creation story, and it teaches us how we live amongst the land and with the water in harmony, and it's the land, because the land looks after us, we have to in turn look after the land. And so when we talk about this level of interconnectedness, that when the salmon populations are hurting or they're facing disease, or when with the creation of overfishing, over commercial fishing in the United States in the 70s, and the construction of the hydroelectric dams, it pretty much made the fish population extirpated up here in Canada, and the effects were catastrophic. Like our well-being, rates of suicide, and all that went up in our communities.
Right. From your knowledge, what kind of relationship does the ONA share with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and the Ministry of the Environment? And also, are the ONA involved with public fishing regulations?
Yes, we are. So, and when you say working relationship, it definitely is. Like, it's not easy. Like, it definitely has its struggles.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of negotiations and meetings that take place. But when we start talking about, so that strength of claim piece, as well as out of the Sparrow case, that's when, so under the Supreme Court of Canada, that we won Aboriginal fishing rights as like a way of life. And so having both of those pieces kind of gives us, I guess, a stronger voice for input. As well as, so within ONA we have the most on staff, the most hired biologists and scientists for a First Nation fishery in Canada. And with our past government and like the muzzling of the scientists, and they had to let go a lot of DFO staff. That meant that we had the most up-to-date like science and data. So that also gave us a stronger voice when talking with both the federal government but also the province.
What's been your most significant experience or accomplishment working with the Okanagan Nation Alliance?
The first is when we do our community distribution of the salmon during the summer, and you're feeding the people and you're bringing them the catch. There's something that's truly special about that, and just seeing how happy that makes community members and elders and the youth. And the second piece is, so I get to do a lot of different youth work and engagement in my job. And we had this one day with one of my programs where we specifically focused on water. And we talked about the importance of ceremony in water, but as well as we had special teachings and trainings for young people who were, I guess, coming of age, like becoming adults. And that they would have to go to the river every morning when you're coming of age and jump in and swim for a whole year, so even in the winter time. And with my group that we were teaching this, you're never sure if the youth are actually listening, but it was a couple weeks after that, one of the parents came up to me, and one of our teenage boys, Wesley, she's like, you'll never believe it, but Wesley's been going and jumping in the creek every day since your guys' workshop. And he did that for a couple of months. And this was like early, starting in February and March. So very cold, icy waters. And just to hear that he was doing that, because he kind of struggles in school and following those types of rules, I guess. But that truly meant, that was really hit me deep, that we are doing the right work for our community.
If you could say something to youth about their role in protecting Okanagan salmon as well as the land and wildlife in general, what would it be?
Just to start speaking up, and that their voice is important and it needs to be heard. And a lot of time that's something that they don't have the confidence in their self or their own culture or teachings. But when they do speak up, it's very powerful. And the role youth play in our communities are also huge, and they need to be lifted up and recognized more. Like even us, like we are youth. We're very innovative, creative, and we're kind of like action doers, I guess, once we get our minds on something. Like we can be very passionate. And especially today, youth are so worldly, right? We're so connected on like social media and Facebook and Twitter that something you post could be received and heard from someone across the world or across Canada, right? So it's very easy for us to start social movements, I think, and we're starting change. So I really encourage the youth I work with to do that.
Can non-Okanagan people get involved with the Salmon Recovery Project? And if they can, how?
Totally. We're always looking for volunteers. So right now we're even looking for volunteers for our habitat restoration projects. So going out and doing plantings of like traditional indigenous plants. As well as we have this Okanagan Salmon Community Initiative during the summertime, where recreation fishers or really interested people can come and volunteer and also help with harvesting and tagging opportunities.